And then, thank you. And then when Charlie gets in, we can do his stuff on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right. Nate, Ashley, you want to
Yeah.
tell us how we're thriving?
Thank you for kicking off the Thriving Thursday Finance meeting. You should see, I know this paper's printed out, I should have it on the screen in front of you as well. But just July through September, so this will be the first quarter of the fiscal year 2026, and where we sit at currently. On the screen right now is just kind of the general revenues that are on the top of page 1, showing you where we're at right now. On the bottom right is that 32.11%, which is higher than that 25%, which is good. I do want to mention that last year at this time, these general revenues were around 38%, so we're slightly under on the revenue side. I'm going to take some time to dig in. I know that the homestead revenue is a little bit less than last year at this time, as well as solar credits, but that's something I can look into to see timing of that and when those will come in. But I just want to give you, like I said, on page 1 at 32.11%. Last year, like I said, we were around 38%. If we jump over to the expenses, which I know I have that breakdown, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen. You all see the green and the yellow, and just to reemphasize, green means they're under that 25% threshold, which is the where we're at in the fiscal year. Yellow means they're over, and you kind of see a splattering of yellows and greens on the paper. Some of that's due to just when expenses came out, so it's not too big of a concern. If you look at the very bottom of the last page, it shows that our expenses are 22.94%. This is actually down. It's not huge. It's just under 1% down from what it was last year. So, like I said, our general revenues, that doesn't include all the departmental revenues. Our general revenues are down, which is not good. Like I said, we'll look to see where those are coming in at. But our expenses are down, like I said, around 1% based on last year's timeline. So nothing too concerning when it comes to expenses that I've looked at. Like I said, everything's kind of based on timing. Like you'll see county tax on page 3. Well, that's the county tax bill for the year. So we're not going to expend any more. That's why we budgeted that exact amount. So when you see 100%, we're done on that category. So like I said, nothing too alarming. Like I said, just wanted to look at some revenue stuff. That once we were out last week. So once I take some time and figure out the timing on that, I can get back to you with next month, and hopefully we're in a better situation when it comes to revenues. But I'm open to answer any questions anyone has about the financials as of now.
I have a comment.
Can you come to a
Yes.
microphone, Sue?
What's that?
Can you get to a microphone?
Say that on your headstone.
Come to the microphone, state your name.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to point
Could be
out
worse.
that the 2026 taxes receivable, the due date was changed to October. So last
Yeah.
year it was September, but we've gotten, in October, we've gotten some big payments and a lot of payments. So it may look like we didn't do that as good as last
No.
year, but it's here, it's just not gonna show up until
No.
the next one.
I'm glad you brought that up, Sue, and I meant to mention that. Yeah, you see that 5.4 million, but obviously we had a lot of money coming in October, which will show on next month's report.
Right.
So just because of the timing, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know.
That's
Now,
all.
that doesn't, just so you're aware, that doesn't account for the total revenues column. I didn't add that number in, so that's not part of the reason why it's down a little bit. But I do want to mention that the timing of the tax payments does account for that, only being at 19.71%, which is on the top of page 1.
Great. No, that's very helpful. I don't have any questions on this, Steve.
I have a question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to get to the revenue page, if you will.
Yes.
It looks like the '26 budget under sweep interest revenue was budgeted for 300,000, and in the first quarter, it looks like you've taken in 146,000. And last year it was 0, so it's showing a 48% increase. So there's two questions. One, last year, I'm guessing it wasn't tracked. And two,
Last year was tracked under the finance department, and I think Tammy or someone mentioned that we should pull it out and just put it in a general revenue, so that's why it shows a 0.
Okay.
But it was tracked.
okay, and this 146 is half of the budgeted amount. Is that for real? Because that's a blessing if that's true, but I'm wondering if that is, if that number, I mean, how could we take in 50% sweep interest of our budget in the first quarter? And I hope it's true. It's a blessing.
I will admit, I missed that when I'm looking at it. It does seem like that something's off, because it should, in my opinion, it should be in the $50,000 to $60,000 range right now. So I'm gonna look into that, and I'm gonna get back to you guys as soon as possible, because like I said, that seems too high for right now.
What is
It would
sweep
be nice.
interest?
Can you explain what sweep interest is, Nate?
Sweep, go ahead.
Well, the finance guy did it.
So basically with the sweep account, it moves the money to a separate account at night and collects interest, and then it comes back the next day. So what happens is all the accounts that we have, and we have, we have about 15 accounts with the city. So what we're doing is we're gaining interest each day on these accounts. So it varies. I think right now it's around 4.5%. I have to look at the exact amount. So we're gaining interest each day from these, what they call sweep accounts.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Ray?
I know this isn't time for public comment, but it's relevant to this interest issue, because this is something I have noticed. When I looked at this online yesterday, and even a month ago, I noticed that you have the sweep interest account in the general thing, but another thing that strikes me as strange, it's good, but it's strange that, and it's just like the sweep interest account, in finance, you have 40230 interest account, and that shows in July to September, $50,860, and you only estimated 75. I'm wondering what that interest is on. And probably Nate can.
Nate, can you chime in there?
I just am wondering, and that's strange
So,
too.
what page was that on, Ray? Sorry.
It's on page three.
This is on page 3.
First line in finance, interest.
And I have it on the screen, and just so you know, Mr. Ray, I did look up this one, and it does seem accurate. I didn't see anything in the wrong account. But I will look at this as well, just like when I look at the sweep accounts, just to ensure that everything is accounted for properly. But I did catch this one whenever I was doing the reports, and everything that seems look like it's in the correct, everything is charted to the correct account. But I will double check and get back with you.
Thanks, Nate, thanks, Ray.
If I may tail on to that a little bit, I wonder, you said you thought that the revenue should be around 50,000, not 146. Is it possible that under the finance department, you're recording it there as well as on the front page?
No, that I know is not happening because there's like I said, all the sweep, it wouldn't go to that 130. That I know for sure. But I can dig deeper and figure out, like I said.
It just
make sure
seems-
both are accurate, but I know that they're not being double accounted for.
It just seems like you mentioned 50,000 earlier,
He knows.
that you thought it, the
Can I
146.
chime in?
Yeah.
I think I may know what this is.
The
So,
wizard
and
would
Can you
come
say
back
your name?
behind the
my name
curtain.
is Nate Burkhardt, IT department. So if I remember correctly, this interest account right here, and Sue might be able to confirm as well, the interest account is used for property taxes, and we just went through the lien process, and you've collected a lot of payments that had a lot of interest. I know there was like one large tax bill that had a lot of interest on it, and I'm guessing that's probably why that's a little lopsided at the beginning of the year, is because of all those lien payments that had all that interest on it. So as we go through the year, we won't be collecting as much interest as we did this part of the year, so that's what I believe what it is.
I agree,
Yep, so, but, anyway, I just thought I'd chime
That's a
in.
good explanation.
Yep.
Thanks, Nate.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it.
Hey,
Awesome.
thank you.
That's why we love our IT department. They live stream the video and do the back ends and all the codes for all the finance accounts. And Ray, we'll double confirm that for you for next time, but I think that's most
Yes.
likely what it was.
Any other questions? And I just wanted to reiterate, this is located on the city's website, so any public is welcome to pull it up and see it at any time, and definitely email myself or the finance department if they have any questions.
Great. No, I think that's all, unless you have anything else, Nate or Ashley, anything?
The only thing I just wanted to reiterate also was, since we didn't have a meeting last week, there is no warrant this week due to the short week, and our AP staff was at a training today. So there is no warrant to sign this week. I just wanted to clarify that.
Great. I think, Charlie, want
Yeah, I
to
just
welcome us?
sure. Sorry for being late this morning. I'm on kid duty. My wife's on a work trip all week out of state, and it's hard to get the kids to school. It's 7:15, and then get to Ellsworth. There's a little bit two traffic jams in the Bucksport Road. Somebody should do something about the traffic and the roads around here. But I think after the end of this month, that's $20 million in infrastructure road upgrades to the city of Ellsworth. And while I know it was a bit of a very difficult spring with all that construction and all that rain, and then we didn't have rain for a long time, we'll be glad to be moving forward for the winter. I was trying to share my screen here, but I think I can't get into it here, so I'll just voice over. One of the, which is relative to finance, sort of a digitization, modernization effort we're embarking on. It could line up towards the next budget season, which is fast approaching, and this year we're going to be starting in November. Last year we kind of started up in December, but once the new council is seated, we'll have a little bit more detail on that budget process. But one of the things I've noticed, is that we just don't have a lot of digitization systems for big pieces of the organization. So procurement, grants management, contracts. We've been looking at a couple systems from Civic Plus and our own internal Cassell, and a company called OpenGov that basically has digital modernization, consolidation systems in those categories. And it's to me it's like a big aha moment on how we're going to modernize with so much incoming, so much growth, and not a huge staff to kind of manage a huge grants consolidation effort. It was an audit finding from the FY24 audit that we need to do better on grants management and tracking, and that's not just one or two grants. I think we saw it as well with how those grants get pulled and the lack of pulling at the right time and kind of funding as they come over. These systems do automatic tracking for all of that and will trigger, once you put them into the system, trigger reports, trigger. One of the things we received a big grant for a new project for a water treatment plant, but then when we got it, they came back to us and said, hey, you haven't done quarterly reporting for the last 4 years on the previous grant, so before we can give you the next grant, you've got to do the quarterly reporting from the last 4 years. So it's one of these things, I think, coming into the organization when I asked for, what's the undesignated fund balance? What's the this? What's the that? And there was just kind of not a lot of answers. That's one of the big reasons that we brought in Danielle, our new Director of Planning and Urban Development. In addition to a lot of municipal experience, she has a ton of experience with the federal government on managing huge grant programs. And as she mentioned yesterday, that's not unique. She was always surprised as a grants manager on municipalities not requesting the money that they were granted. And I said, well, why is that? It's not just an Ellsworth problem. And she said it's staff turnover. staff turnover. That person leaves, they applied for the grant, there was no system in place to kind of hold that grant and track it forever, and then trigger the organization to do all the proper, and then especially in growing systems, and you have a high turnover rate, like those staff members leave. And I think when the year one that I was here, there was like a $700,000 outstanding reimbursement for DEP, and and how many of those are there, and what's the system for how many are outstanding that hasn't been there before. So likely in November, I'll come forward on some of those pieces for digital modernization to kind of, it's an audit finding, so I want to make sure we solve that, but we do so in a way that isn't just, okay, we've solved it so that Nate, Ashley, and I know what our grant landscape is, but so that if Nate, Ashley, and I aren't here, you can just go into the system, see the entire inventory of all of our grants, see what's been drawn down, see where the reporting's at, and then it has like automatic email triggers to make sure that, the city manager or maybe even city councilors, and it's all public and online, and so you can really make it a transparent system. Same thing for procurement. If you were to say, what's the last 6 years of procurements that have happened in the city of Ellsworth, that'd be a big project for me to, go through every single procurement that's been done. But there's digital systems that can monitor and track that and make it public and publish it, in perpetuity, so that our procurement processes can be really transparent and open, multiple checks and balances, scoring within the systems themselves as opposed to shuffling around Excel sheets to do scoring, how the open bids are working. So there's an element to better financial tracking, better transparency, but also just accountability too. So this is the process, having good process like that, I think ensures public trust in government too. So I'll probably be coming forward, maybe at a workshop, but maybe actually we'll think about, maybe for a finance committee meeting, it might make sense to do a larger demonstration of what these systems can help us with. So that's it for me today.
Do you have a feel of the cost of this?
Yeah, so we're gonna look at through Sourcewell the larger government cooperative agreements on a variety of systems. So before obviously with a procurement, I want to get a good deal on these pieces, but I could see. I don't want to say yet. I could see around 20,000 as like the professional services to implement the system. This is going to be a big training for all of our staff as well. And then around maybe less for a service contract moving forward. I know. What's our Cassell yearly cost, Nate? Do you know that? I know Nate in there probably knows that, but for that software system, is it 100,000 or?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact. I can try to look it up really quick while you're talking, but.
So yeah, I'll come back with that as well. But I think that's around the range for these systems, so.
Is that annual cost?
Annual cost, so there's like a
One time?
there's a professional services, we got to train all the staff, train all these pieces, do your digital transformations, and then the service contract fee. So there's probably 3 or 4 players in this space, so I'll get competitive bids to get a better dial in on cost. There's also an aspect, there's the finance, procurement, grants management, contract management. Those are, I think it's part of a modernization effort. Almost every growing city would have some sort of system like that to monitor those processes. It's I don't think that's a want. That's a need for it's a very high cost when we miss out on reimbursing ourselves $700,000. It's a very high cost on the interest on a grant that wasn't pulled the right way or not even getting that. It's a very high cost. Actually, I think especially with grants management, it gives the ability to track and monitor and then apply for more and more grants. And I think that 10, 15 years ago in Ellsworth, you could have a couple people that had been here for a very long time kind of keep it in their head how many grants the city has and what all the requirements are for that. But moving forward as a growing city, we're going to need a grants management system. Cost will, I think, be a factor, but the days of having individuals hold them in Excel sheets, literally, we're trying to find Tammy's binder for finance policies and procedures that she put together a long time ago. And then when she left, that binder is somewhere, but there was 5 years in finance of really no kind of those pieces. And I know Sue Lassard's on that project now, so we have a new setup that's internal, but also public, and those other three pieces are important. I think it'll be broader than that, too. And I guess this is relative to cost, although it's not necessarily finance. So our water system as well. We don't have a digital, GIS systems map for every single pipe that we have in the city of Ellsworth. So oftentimes, I don't say oftentimes, but there are times when the water department will go out to a dig. There's a break there, they've got something they want to do for the service upgrade, and they'll go in there and they think it's a 6-inch pipe, but it's actually a 4-inch pipe. So we spend a ton of time to go out there to dig a hole, to put a hole back together. And then, so I asked, hey, how do we keep track of this? How do you annotate it? How does it move forward? And there's a big map paper map in the water department that has these things. The wastewater department is actually all digitized for the most part, so that one doesn't need it, but the water department for our service distribution system will need that. That also creates problems like the fire hydrant issue that we recently had. I was informed that we had some fire hydrants out. I said, well, what's our process for putting them back onto service? And there really wasn't one, so we developed one. We got, I gave a date deadline. We need to have it in 6 weeks. We got all the fire hydrants replaced and back online. But when you go through use a modern water distribution system, everybody can be in that. The fire department, if they see something goes out, if a citizen or the city council sees one of those pieces go out, they can notify me, they can put in a work order. The fire department themselves, the water department, puts it in the system. This fire hydrant, it triggers an entire chain of events of, this date it has to be replaced by. We have a policy to have all fire hydrants replaced within 6 weeks. The fire department themselves will be notified, as soon as one is out, so that if they were going to a fire, they'd be able to say, hey, this fire hydrant is not working. Or if there's a pressure issue in an area, I know talking to the fire department about the benefits of that type of system, they'd be able to be dispatched and then get information on where the closest fire hydrant is, like in GIS, in those systems. Same thing with Public Works. Oftentimes, our work plans and other things are, more paper systems. So when you see a modern digital Public Works system, it's something we thought about in the Parks and Rec pieces on hey, how do you open Knowlton Park? How do you repair and maintain Knowlton Park? I know 3 or 4 years ago, the pipes froze because there wasn't a system to trigger that, hey, we need to service that before everything freezes. So now we have a water feature that, because of a lack of a maintenance schedule, wasn't in there. Same thing with all of our facilities. You look at these digital facilities tracking systems for cities, you go through an entire building like this, you label every single fixture. You do an inventory assessment of your HVAC systems, of all your maintenance team, and our capital improvement plan. That'll be part of it too. And then you can basically have the reports themselves spit out, this is what your maintenance is going to need to be, this is what you're going to need to keep track of, just like a car, basically, but for every single one of your assets. And to me, there's the big benefit here is with turnover, and I hope to reduce turnover, but some organizations have more turnover than others. I think, Ellsworth isn't the only municipality in Maine that has dealt with turnover over the past 10 years. I know you know that, Patrick. So how do we can fight that as much as we can, and we've done better hiring processes, employee engagement. We've worked on performance pay this year with council, but also how do we create systems in the city so that, hey, if Roddy leaves tomorrow as Parks and Rec director, there's still a system in place for how you open Knowlton Park, how you open the marina, how all the maintenance schedules work for the buildings, so that it's not so in one person's head. It's going to be a big effort over probably multi-years for the city. We'll talk more about it in the budget process, but I did want to mention some of those, I think, more immediate needs in the finance area that I'd like to tackle first, and I'll be bringing forward that to council at some point.
Great. Anything else, Charlie?
Cassell was 3,800 a month, just so.
Gotcha.
45 or so. Great.
Yeah.
Anything from the public? Okay, well, everyone have an excellent Thursday. Oh, sorry. Thought Ray was running out the door.
I don't think everybody heard you.
Raymond Williams, 56 Hancock Street. about 2 weeks ago, every morning, or most every morning, mid-morning sometime, I go in and look at certain things on my internet. I look at my economics pages and financial policy pages, and I also go in and look at the City of Ellsworth page. And the first thing that popped up that day, and I think it was about 2 weeks ago, either today or yesterday, was a request for proposal for substantially revising the assessment department and the assessment provisions and assessment policies of the City of Ellsworth. Basically, it was a request for proposals to send out to all the various, I'm assuming, assessing companies in the state of Maine, and who knows, maybe in all of New England, to basically replace the Ellsworth City Assessor with an assessor's agent. Now, I try to pay close attention to what's going on with the city council. I come to these meetings, and usually these finance ones, if I don't come, I go on and I look, and I can get on fairly quickly, and I can look and I can figure out whether I want to spend a lot of time listening or not. And I follow council meetings either online or I come. And I cannot rack my brain. I cannot remember recently any discussion at the council workshops, a regular council meeting, or at a finance committee meeting of provisions of any talk that the council has been involved in regarding reforms or changes in the assessing department. So I basically, I don't know where this has come from, because I think to do anything with the assessing department, I would just throw out. I've looked at it close. I haven't looked at it closely, and I think that to do anything with assessing department in the City of Ellsworth, you may have to have a charter revision before you can really do much of anything. I looked at the request for proposals, and then I looked at, they had some time to have some questions come in, and basically, when the questions that came in and the answers that came out to them, basically, apparently some of the questions, someone had looked at the request for proposal, whoever put it out, and I don't think it came from the assessing department. I think it came from other parts of the city administration. There was at least one, which I view as a serious error in it. It talked about the computer program used by, I don't know, I think the assessing department or something, but had references to Munis. And the city, I hope, is not doing anything with Munis now. I thought Munis was an abomination when it was adopted 10 or 12 years ago, when I was on the library board, and the information that we got from Munis was awful, but that's go to other things. And then the correction came out, that came out a week ago from the city, said that the program that was being used was Trio. And so I don't know who managed to screw that up. I would suspect that, I really don't know how that could have gotten fouled up, because Munis hasn't been used for at least 6 months, or maybe closer to a year. I don't know. No, that doesn't matter, but it was an error that, as far as I'm concerned, should not have been in the original request for proposals. And then the next thing was, there was a revision, or an answer to a question about, someone had sent in about when is the assessor's office going to be open? And the response said that it would, and I don't have the exact response, but it said that it would be basically open as needed. Although in the original request for proposal, I believe it had some more specific language stating that the assessor's office would be open from 6 to 10 days on a monthly basis. And that also had some fuzzy language in it too, giving room for things, which really, and that bothered me. That didn't hit me initially, but when the question came in, I went back and I looked, and they differed substantially, because the answer to this question, the question implied that the assessor's office under this new administration, whoever's running it, would be open more often than it was in the initial request for proposals. but it also had the fuzzy language as required or as needed. I think that, I don't know what they, and the date for the request for proposal was yesterday afternoon at 2 p.m. So in addition, I'm just wondering what information, input the council has had on this request for proposals, because since the assessing is a complete separate city department, basically run by the assessor, who has certain requirements under state law that he has to comply with. And even though there is language in our charter that says that these various departments, the assessors, city clerk's departments, treasurer's department, and tax collector's department, all are separate appointments by the council, as I read it. They are not manager appointments. They are made by the council.
Yeah, and sorry, I can chime in, Ray, to answer some of these questions.
Could we
Well, I have-
let him finish?
I have one or two final questions. Basically, the request for proposals came in yesterday at 2 o'clock. I would like to know if you have any information now as to how many proposals you received, and basically what the underlying, I really would like to see the cost on them. And if you can give us the cost now for each one of them, I think that would be helpful, because I don't know how you're paying for this, because I can't believe you're going to get proposals that are in, it's supposed to start July 1. You're going to get proposals in that are going to be able to come anywheres within the current fiscal year budget. The current fiscal year budget for the assessing department. And I think that I really would like to know what input the council itself has had into this request for proposal, because I'm not aware of any public discussion. And I think this is something that should have had public discussion even before the request for proposal went out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. There's a lot there, but a few pieces is what we've had many discussions about assessing over the last 6 months. I know if you've, and over the last years, the assessing tax commitment has been late, I think for the last 4 or 5 years now. That's created huge delays for taxpayers in getting their bills. Last year, they actually received bills after the tax deadline. This year, we pushed back the deadline. And as mentioned during the assessing process, when we were notified, I would say in April, May, or maybe it was May, that by the city assessor that the assessment might be late again, that we'd be looking at a whole range of options to consider to improve service here. And I know I've had some public conversations about how seriously I've taken this, because that's a core responsibility for the city of Ellsworth, is to deliver your tax bills on time. Now, we've had an incredible amount of growth in the city over the last 5 years as well. 1.1 billion, I think, to 1.7 billion in state valuation increase. Those valuation increases, that's a increase from 2009 to 2020, it was like 1.1 billion to 1.1 billion. So it's an 11-year time frame for a $100 million increase, and then for a 5-year time frame, you have a $600 million increase. That's put enormous pressures in the system. That's part of the growth in Ellsworth, has been dealing with that, and some departments have been doing better than others. We had a lot of growth in the finance department on how we could approach that. In the near term, we hired an additional contractor to help us get assessments over the line in some of the more complicated parcels. We brought in our code office to do individual measurements of certain pieces, which the code office, which were pretty basic, that they get back to the assessing firm. There's been a new hire in that department. And then, as I've mentioned here too, as we've done with the budget process, doing kind of an after-action reports of what's working well and what's not working well, what are our options. And I'll be sending out a memo to council on this later in the day, and Ray will also be for you. So we've looked at some internal process reforms. This is a big growing piece that would potentially, would a new hire be needed to kind of stabilize this piece? But as with all things, when you're having service issues that are long-standing and large, you kind of owe it to the system itself to consider outsourcing, to see if the private sector has any abilities from a contract or consultant base. I don't take outsourcing lightly. I think we will, Ray, have a conversation in public at the next meeting on a potential path forward here. The council can choose to move forward with it, or they can choose not. But we had one bidder on the proposal. We had a couple of people that made inquiries. I was hoping to get more bids, but I'll have more details on that shortly. That's not unique in Ellsworth. We're in a very kind of rural place. I wish we had, there's a lot of our bids come in with one. I think that's why I want to do a new procurement system, so that we can get these out faster, get them out broader, make it easier to do digital submissions for our bids themselves. I think our bid process is very cumbersome right now. And then give council the option. I don't want to preview too much of what will be in the memo, but the finance piece is a big part of it. This is actually other cities and towns. It's in my research on how to improve service here, I came across the fact that there's other like cities and towns in the area that use an assessing service for just this reason. I talked to our legal counsel as well. The way it's sort of ordered in the council meeting is, basically essentially a request to dissolve the assessing department, and then under the contingency that an executed agreement with a new assessing consultant, and that consultant would be appointed as the city's assessor. So that is the potential. It has, I think we can, going through that route, that we would have going from 2 people in assessing to, and code. There's also a backfill in the code area where the city of Ellsworth used to structure their system with a code planning and assessing kind of general assistant in that area. And that we can backfill that person as well. So essentially going from 3 FTEs to 1 in that area. And with the consultant, we'd save about $65,000 a year for the taxpayer of Ellsworth in year 1. Plus, going with the contract consultant relationship, I think the way other cities and towns have done it, and this is the flexibility about the hours, it would be a service change. The city's assessor would probably be available 1 or maybe more a week as needed for scheduled hours, but that we'd have somebody with general assessing knowledge that would be kind of manning the desk and kind of holding the desk for that whole area. So again, I don't take outsourcing lightly. It's something we'll talk more about at the next meeting. There'll be a full memo on it. But I wanted also to have the information before I came to council to say what a price for this could be, and to have good information on what it would look like, what the service would be. From what I've seen from this proposal, this would be a cost savings for the city. Many other cities and towns go this route. And with the main focus on, we got to get our tax bills out on time. And we're a growing city, and what are the ways that we can do that? This, to me, seems like the best path forward, but we don't make decisions in these meetings, and, for the city council meeting is, I think, the appropriate place for probably more of a discussion there.
So after all of that, is it fair to tell Mr. Williams that next Thursday, I almost said Friday, finance meeting, there might be more on this subject?
The city council meeting on
No,
Monday.
Monday.
On next Monday, there'll be more?
Yeah.
Okay. So that won't come to finance before it goes to council?
No, and I'd want this at a council meeting for a discussion of.
Well, most times, things come to finance before it goes to council. I think that's Ray's point. Or maybe one of the workshops or something like that. But nevertheless, the answer is we're going to have more information on the 20th. Is that fair to say?
This coming Monday, which, I think that's the 20th. Yep.
One other thing I would like to tag on to Mr. Williams' comment. And I don't think this is overly new, but I have noticed since I have been here, there's been a lot of talk about the charter. And Charlie, I've mentioned this to you before. It seems that 1 minute the charter is bylaws, Bible, city constitution, and 1 minute it's fire starting material, and there is no view to that. And
Can you give an example of that, Steve?
oh, I've got plenty. But I think that if you're gonna treat it like fire starting material, fine, just do it every day. But if you're gonna treat it like the manual, the bylaws, the Constitution, the Bible, then do that every day. An example of that is, to answer your question, we have created all kinds of positions, and I brought this up before, in city government in the last year and a half that doesn't exist in the charter. And when I brought that up before, at that point, it come before the council, but we've never talked about listing those positions in the charter. And if we're gonna treat this charter, whatever way you choose to treat it, just do it the same every day, okay? Not one time that's comfortable to use it and one time that's uncomfortable not to use it. And a great example is all of these positions, and I said this back along, that you've got positions that you've created that doesn't exist in the charter.
So just to follow up on that, Steve, are you saying that the city can't create any positions unless they're listed in the charter?
I am saying that many of them are listed in the charter. So if you're gonna look at that charter, and you want it to be fire starting material, that's fine, but make it fire starting material every day. But if you're gonna have a list of positions in that charter, then that's gotta be a full list of positions. So I am saying that.
Well, I disagree with your interpretation
I'm
of
not
the
surprised.
charter. Well, I actually take the charter and the laws of this nation and the state very seriously, and when we become city councilors, we swear an oath to do that, and I know all our staff do as well. Other than this kind of flimsy example you've provided, I've only
Flimsy?
seen a staff and counselors doing their best to follow the laws of the state and the nation and in our charter and our ordinances. You're entitled to your opinion, Steve. I believe it's wrong. I know in my conversations with everyone's trying to do their best to actually adhere to the laws. You're free to have your opinion, but
I do have my opinion, and I'm not asking you to change yours like you asked me to change mine.
I haven't asked you to change your opinion once.
Oh, yes, you have.
Okay, Steve. I learned long ago that's not a fruitful path. I think with that, we can conclude the meeting.
No, we can't. There's another public comment.
You are not the chair.
You're not either. You're chair of the council, not this.
We can conclude the meeting whenever we want, Steve.
Let's listen to this guy. You can leave if you want. I want to hear what he's got to say.
Good morning, Jared, resident. So, past couple weeks, I've noticed some surveys going out on the city website, asking for citizens' input on walkability and bike paths and this sort of stuff, where the city's moving forward with the state on matching funds to possibly extend like the River Walk or going up Birch Hill, which, you know, I'm all for good sidewalks and walkability and that sort of deal. Which kind of got me thinking, we have a TIF district that's paying good money, or city is collecting money from the TIF district, and one of the parts of the wording, I believe, is for walkability. But yet, if you were a citizen and you wanted to walk through the TIF district, you can't. So part of me is like, we're spending this time to put money so we get matched or so much more from the state, which I'm totally for. But if we already have money in the TIF fund, why aren't we spending and allocating that money to actually make it so citizens can walk through the TIF district? Now, with the developments going on and the future developments that have been brought up, if you wanted to walk from point A to point B, you're walking through a hayfield. And if you want to keep these people who are coming on a short stay at some place and be like, I want to move to Ellsworth, walking through a hayfield might not be the answer. So I just, before we start looking at how we're going to reword the TIF to be able to allocate that money to other funds, maybe we should actually allocate that money to what it was actually designed for back in the day.
Yeah, I think I've talked to Tiff a couple times, and we'll have our TIF consultant who we've engaged on this very project. As I've mentioned a few times before here, that you can see when the TIF districts were created originally, and 3 or 4 times, and sort of edits to those TIF plans so that they can be most aligned with cities' infrastructure and economic development needs. We just had a couple $100,000 fall off on a debt service, I think on, what was it, Beachland, the Beachland Road.
Beachwood fell.
So, and then reviewing those TIF districts, like a lot of things around here, they haven't been redesigned or edited in a decade. So instead of just saying, all right, we got 200,000 there, let's do it into what the TIF is currently allowable, well, it's branding, and we haven't, and events. I mean, we could spend a lot of money to bring a big country music star here. It would be allowable. The city council could use that $200,000 for events, under that purpose, but that's not for the highest purpose of the city. And we have a growing Parks and Rec department. We have some major infrastructure needs that need to be looked after, and just like in previous iterations of city government, an edit, a modification, reanalysis of the TIF districts before you spend any of that money that's allocated for those specific purposes. I think in order. I think one of the other pieces I also recognize it's just kind of a big map that's drawn around an area, and you wouldn't, and that's not exactly, Patrick, or you probably know more on this. It's sort of, they essentially designate a growth area, and then that whole landmass, the increment on the increase in valuation on those parcels, kicks off the additional TIF revenue that's sequestered from the state, so it doesn't hurt your revenue sharing. So it does give you these kind of additional economic tools, but I'm a little bit more aligned with your opinion. I think there's also mention in the TIF plan now that we should create a downtown TIF Portage District. And then if we did create that Portage District, we'd be able to spend money from that TIF account into the downtown. I think that's a good idea. We have some infrastructure needs downtown. We really want to make the downtown a thriving area. We should consider creating that TIF Portage District. But maybe they also fall off at a certain period of time. So, so I could see future iterations being doing the waterfront area, which, could be, has been talked about for 30 years now. There's plans on how to redevelop the waterfront in my office. And I feel like that could actually help that area. Could consider enhancement agreements, the courthouse redevelopment area, or the urban growth area as well. The council might want to consider a TIF district around there, or to Steve's point, the council might want to consider abolishing all the TIF districts and putting the surplus back into the general account, which we've asked the consultant to also analyze that process. So I think we'll have a much fuller discussion of that going forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, if we don't abolish it, we keep moving, I feel like it'd be worth putting the investment into the TIF district, not only for the citizens, but obviously you want the TIF district to grow, to generate more of a tax base. And, if Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth don't have a car, and they have to walk to Walmart to get their milk, you're not doing them any justice by dumping the money into the waterfront down there. They
Right.
should be able to walk safely year-round to where they need to go to get their needs.
Yeah, and we have 2 initiatives on that front. The Village Partnership Initiative, a potential $30 million 9-to-1 state, federal to city match that could help with that multimodal walkability in the downtown area. And then there's a Thriving Communities Initiative with the federal government that we're about to enter the engineering phase. Again, kind of the High Street corridor to make it so you can walk across the street. To go from one business to another, which right now is a dicey game. Those, and these TIF districts could potentially help put away money for those, 9-to-1 match is great on a $30 million investment, but that's still a $3 million match need from the city of Ellsworth. I think we should take advantage of that huge state federal investment, but let's start squirreling away money now through redesigning our TIF districts so that when that happens, we don't have to, take it out of the general taxpayers' dollars, and that's all aligned. To me, that's, that's a core piece of good government, is looking ahead to these. But it's also related to our procurement and grants management systems. If we're going to, especially the Thriving Communities, the VPI, the Village Partnership Initiative, that's more of like a set thing with the state and the federal government on how that moves forward with the transportation piece. The Thriving Communities one, that could be tens of millions of dollars as well, but that's more of like the feds help you with the engineering of what it could be in the High Street area, but then we'll have to kind of look to grants, and that'll be a much more involved process with city and staff to initiate a public works project of that size. And I don't think Myrick Street's probably the closest example, but I don't think the city's ever attempted that level, and in our growth. I mean, that's a $100 million investment potentially between those two projects, or if not more, to totally change our multimodal development here. Also includes a lot of stormwater. I heard that at the Meet the Candidates event 2 days ago. There was a lot of talk on stormwater. It's not the sexiest thing in the world to figure out. Nobody gets elected, I don't think. Maybe they do. But it's really important, right? I mean, that's this growing city, all of this water, where is it going? I think it was mentioned hasn't been redone since, I think, Mr. Linehan was in high school. So those bills, those pieces are coming due. It'd be nice to be set up for that when it comes, but also to having, a better grants management process, procurement process in place to move forward on those. So, but not to mention, go too deep here, but our current TIFs allow for like getting sidewalk equipment, but towards the Myrick Street area in that quarter, like we don't need to plow sidewalks. There are no sidewalks.
But if you put sidewalks, you can plow it, and you can use the TIF money for it.
That's true, but putting them up sidewalks up
But then you're
there,
investing into a prime commercial district where you're gonna gain more on the tax base once that gets developed. Obviously, what's going on in that area is gonna start being developed again.
Yeah.
We need to look forward and put the money in there to get these big stores to come back into town.
that's a good point, Jared. You always start off the same saying you're dead wrong. Like, why would we put sidewalks up there? We got a ton of money to be doing on other things, but
Well, if you're building whatever it is for a hotel, however much it's gonna cost, and you're there, and you wanna walk to Walmart,
can't do it.
and you can't do it.
Yeah.
And they might be like, I love Ellsworth, but I can't even walk to Walmart, And so I feel like if these big corporations are coming in and spending the money, the city should invest back into it.
And the
'Cause-
infrastructure to sort of trigger that, because that's, we're, I don't want to go down too much of but we're meeting with the developer up there once a month now, just to try to see if we can get some momentum on that area, which has been vacant for 10 years. So that could be part of the TIF process. I know, and I think that's the other piece too, is really talking to council about, that versus some of the other pieces of Riverwalk connecting the marina to the downtown has been talked about for a long time. Brewers had a lot of success with that. But is that more valuable than getting,
Well, that's what I mean. It's like you gotta spend, if you spend the money down here, what are you gonna get for a tax base to actually help the citizens? Where if you spend the investment to go up into the business district, and all of a sudden you get even one more store at $10 million for assessed value, what's that gonna help on the tax base?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think some people think of that Myrick Street area as like a public infrastructure, debacle, and it didn't get built. I kind of see it as latent potential. And if you just look at the Walmart and Home Depot alone, like those two stores, I think
You
it's
have two huge anchors.
it's $300,000 a year in taxes, I think. I mean, if you do the math on that infrastructure project, it's been paid over 5 times over already just by those anchors. So, and thank God Joann's Fabrics didn't go in there in 2010. So we have an opportunity to do that development in the right way. It could be some interesting things.
I think those are great points, Jared. And I think my conversations with folks on the council and elsewhere is walkability and, kind of it's part of public transportation too. Like our feet are the ultimate form of transportation. And I think it's a good point. And being able to, I'd like to see High Street safer for pedestrians. I think having, folks to be able to get to all those retail, venues would be a plus.
if the council was to abolish the impact fees east of Card Brook, all of these conversations would not be happening.
Yeah, I think we're considering that for the ordinance change too. The impact fee removal, I think I would like to do that. Ultimately, that'll be up to council, and I think there might be a fairness thing for the folks that have paid into that already, and that new folks aren't going to have to pay the impact fees, but I'm in the ordinance changes. We just had a conversation with our team about that yesterday, and, there are a few things that we'd like to add regulatory-wise, but I'd hope that the end scope of that is pulling it back to, we've talked about this before, the parking lot requirements, heights of buildings, how can we make it as business-friendly as possible? And I would, if you don't mind, just a quick circle back on the, lighting the fire on charter, or on the charter on fire. It's, I really don't believe in that. I think I've tried to hold as true to the charter as I possibly can. I'm always pinging our legal representatives. Ray, I think I love it when Ray's up here. And he sees something that wasn't done, if the public hearings weren't noticed right. And we've had to table a fair amount of things in the council meeting. I hope we're getting better on that. And if any piece is in there, I've brought it forward to council. I know, Steve, you mentioned just specifically at the request of Council Lyons, like what this burning on fire of the charter was about. In terms of confirmed administrative employees, yep, sometimes there's a titling change. I know my work in other governments, oftentimes titles are important to people and you have to modernize those for that, and it might not match the charter. I wouldn't mind seeing like an update to the titles. I mean, for example, we have a community development director in the charter, but that's been called the economic development director for 6 or 7 years now. So that could be updated. However, according to the charter, section 6.05, confirmed administrative employees, it says the city manager will annually appoint the following administrative employees subject to confirmation by council. And it has the ones that you requested or that you said are listed therein. That's absolutely true, provided the council elects to create, fill, and maintain such departments. In the event that the city elects to create, fill, and maintain a department head position or deputy department head position not listed herein, such positions will be deemed to be confirmed administrative employees. Confirmed administrative employees will be subject to the city's personnel rules unless a member of a collective bargaining unit will report to the city manager and will perform duties ascribed to them by general law, this charter, city ordinance, or assigned to them by the city manager. So I'm not a lawyer, but I've brought forward every single appointee that we've brought in here to be a confirmed administrative appointee. It seems pretty darn clear that page 20, section 6.05 allows for that. That's not burning the charter on fire. And sometimes there's employee addition. I know we've talked about this before in budget cycles. But I've also have an agenda item on Monday too. It's not just necessarily about adding, but how can we provide the best service, the best titles to get the best people here, and do so within the charter. And if there's any ever specifics that needs to be updated or feels like somebody is not being followed, I'm happy to look at it, happy to consider making changes. There is other sections too, which we're trying to get better at. And it mentions the need for a 1, 5, and 10-year capital improvement plan in here as part of the budget process. I was shocked when I arrived we didn't have that. We're working like heck to get that together. We have a contractor that's in the charter as well. A lot of our budget processes weren't being followed prior to arriving here. I think, from what I found thus far in my tenure, it's kind of about modernizing and creating a system that can be as faithful to the charter as possible. And no employees that I've ever worked with, we have tons of conversations with our legal counsel to make sure we're involved or to be aligned with the charter and any citizen or anybody else who doesn't think so. I'm very happy to have that conversation in my office, in public, anywhere. We always should be following the charter. It's our founding document. So, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
All disagreement